Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage, episode 74, Kylie and Fallout, the Garden of Adam. This episode is about the Fallout universe, which I'm hoping most of the listeners are aware of. Season 2 of the Fallout TV show just ended. This episode's about an actual play of a RPG campaign about Fallout that should be just as fun to listen to, so give this episode a listen and then go check out the Fallout Garden of Adam actual play on YouTube. Now let's get those ads out of the way, and then you can get into listening to the show. I'm here today with Kylie from the Dicescape Fallout Garden of Adam show, which is pretty cool. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Isaac?
Good. So we want to talk about the show, but I also want to know more about who you are as a person. So who is Kylie outside of RPGs and Dicescape?
Oh my gosh. That is kind of my life because it's what I do full time. I'm a full-time game master. So I run, at this point, I run six paid games a week. And then I have a couple shows too that I'm in the works. So anywhere between like 6 to 8 campaigns that I'm running a week, and then producing, editing shows. So that's really a lot of my time goes into that. But beyond like RPGs and things like that, I'm also just a writer in general. So it's when I have my free time, I will sit down, have a nice cup of coffee, and get some writing done. But I'm pretty inundated in it. It's been my life for the past 2.5 years, and I enjoy it a lot. But yeah, that's really me right now. It's my main focus, really, as it being my main source of income. Yeah.
How did that get started for you?
I was just kind of done with my day-to-day. I was working just a normal 9 to 5, which, nothing wrong with that. But I was it really wasn't fitting what I was hoping in life. I went to school for film and business, and I really enjoyed writing and didn't really want to go to LA at that time, and had been into, tabletop games and things like that, and saw the kind of what people were doing in the actual play space. And I started running games, a couple games paid on Start Playing, and then I started to build a big community, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I eventually had one of my players say, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. You should think about maybe doing a show." So it was some encouragement from a couple players, and that's what kind of kicked the actual play stuff off. But yeah, it was just kind of tying into our motto of escaping the mundane. It was just getting away from that kind of 9 to 5 and reclaiming a schedule that's my own. It's crazier. I will say I'm a lot busier than when I was working then, but it's so much more fulfilling.
Yeah, I feel like running your own business is always going to feel busier because it's only you.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, it's been wonderful, and I honestly wouldn't trade it. So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Start Playing really took off like a few years ago, so it sounds like you also joined with that sort of tidal wave of more and more people doing that.
Yeah, the momentum. Because, it really picked up around COVID, and then I think, because I really jumped into it, about 2.5 years ago was when I really dove in. So, 2022, around then. So, yeah.
So the actual play was like, it seemed like your players thought of the idea. Is that what you said?
Well, it was someone encouraged me to do it, and then we started with like a kind of a noir cosmic horror style show, but the kind of what's interesting about, I think, actual plays is scheduling can be a little bit harder than like the paid games. So that kind of fell off a little bit. So you learn a lot from projects when you go into it as a first kind of quote unquote show. And then we came back I went back to the drawing board and thought about, what do I want to do? What kind of story do I want to tell? And that's the Fallout universe is so fun. And I was like, all right, I want to do this. And then I found a few friends that are also performers as well. And I said, hey, do you want to make a Fallout show? And yeah, it kind of just it went from there.
Yeah, yeah. And this was before the first season of the TV show came out. You must have had the idea before that.
Yeah, yeah. So because it was interesting, we started production before the first season of the TV show came out, and then we just happened to start releasing around when the TV show launched too, just with how production, the post-production aspect worked on our end. And yeah, it's been really fun and something I'm excited to dive back into because there's still a lot of story to tell, and we ended season one on a big cliffhanger. So want to make sure we deliver moving forward.
So I only listened to like the first 3 episodes. That's like how I do it, because like trying to listen to, I interview a lot of actual played podcasts, and trying to listen to like the entire backlog is just too much.
It's a lot. Yeah, no, especially that show too, because those were longer. I would say those were definitely longer episodes.
Yeah.
What I've learned is with the newer shows, because we're in production right now with another show, and really keeping them under 3 hours. Like, and shows moving forward are going to be like 2 to 2.5 hours, just because I think those are nice little bits where people are at work or something. They want to get a couple hours of an episode in, and then it's easier to keep up that way rather than 3-4 hour episodes. That's certainly something I've learned from just my own observations.
Yeah, definitely. I think part of it is also just trying to edit the show down a bit as well. It's more difficult with a video show because then the edits are going to be more obvious. Like with an audio show like mine, I edit it and no one knows.
Right. Yeah, we have one show that's in production right now that's going to be a podcast. So that will definitely get those episodes will be shorter because we can narrow them down. But I will say something that we're starting to do with our shows, and it's the inspiration's kind of drawn from Dimension 20, is we're doing different kinds of frames so I can cut down some of that time by like doing like a single frame shot of one of the players if they have like a monologue they're having, so I can kind of narrow down that time a little bit. Or like 2 players are talking, I can spotlight them and then cut some of that fat out. That's just lag time. So it's just a learning process. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's just at that point like you're actually doing real editing instead of just removing stuff. You're trying to actually bring people into the front, and that it's better, but it does expand the work that you have to do in post-production.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely takes time.
So you started off with a different show and then moved to Fallout. And was the Fallout group the same as that first show you did for the players?
Two players from that show returned, and then we brought on 2 new players, 2 new cast members. And we did a lot of preliminary play testing, just kind of chemistry tests to make sure that the group was going to work well together. And after about 3 little sessions with the group, in learning the rules and stuff like that, because it was a new game for everybody, we thought we had a good group, made connections with their characters, and then we just jumped into the sandbox that is Fallout.
Well, yeah. So Fallout, I want to give, I know a lot of people listening to this probably do know what Fallout is, but I'd like to give more of a what is this setting that we're going to talk about first? Yeah. Do you want to talk about what Fallout is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's Fallout being a post-apocalyptic world, essentially. The bombs dropped, people went into vaults, some people survived on the surface. There's lots of mystery and intrigue that comes with it, scheming from different organizations, whether that be the Institute, the Enclave, then of course you have the Brotherhood of Steel. You have haven't really encountered them in our setting because they're on the opposite side of the country, the NCR. The Northern California Republic, or the New California Republic, rather.
Yep.
So there's a lot of, I used to live in Northern California, so that's why my brain went there.
And
The
there's
New
also
California.
a separatist movement there, so it's sort of
Yeah.
almost like a real thing.
So we wanted to kind of explore. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's all of these different factions and possible threats, and then of course there's just people that survived on settlements scattered across. At least kind of ours was in, obviously it's in the United States, so kind of scattered across the United States, and we talked about it a lot, and our focus was like, what happens if we started talking about like amusement parks and like Nuka World and things like that. We were like, why don't we have it be like Orlando, near Orlando, Florida? Like the vault is on a golf course where it's a bunch of like retirees with too much money, that they're just like, let's have a vault there. And that's kind of what drew our inspiration to start our story in Florida. So we, and from what we could tell, there wasn't, if I recall correctly, because there's so much stuff out there for Fallout, I don't believe there's any like. I think there might be a vault in Florida, but I think what's great about the setting is there's stuff you can play with, and I even think in the show like they're standing in front of the map and you actually can't see Florida, so it kind of leaves it open to being like, all right, there are a few vaults in Florida. We kind of really took that the ethos that was Fallout, and we're like, let's put one near Orlando and have some fun with that. And the Garden of Adam essentially is inspired by like the Tree of Life at the Animal Kingdom in Disney. So that's kind of some of the inspiration for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can pick a place to put a vault in the United States and it'll make sense. You don't really need to justify it.
Right.
And it feels like, inevitably as the show continues, they're going to add more and more vaults and the games too. So they'll run out of numbers eventually, because I think they cap themselves at like 108 vaults or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the official number. So obviously there can still be more secret vaults, but
yeah.
But plenty to use for whatever location and story you kind of want to do with the vaults.
Exactly.
So the vaults were built as like a place for people to buy survival at once the like nuclear mutually assured destruction happened in this alternate history of the Cold War basically continuing forever.
Right, absolutely.
And the other part of the vaults that's not revealed so much in the show, but in the games, is that each vault kind of has like an experiment that they're doing. And the show has talked about that, but hasn't shown it as much. But like in the games, whenever you find a vault, it's always like, okay, what screwed up thing were people doing here to the participants, like the people that lived in the vault?
Yeah. I think that was one of the things that I had the most fun with, was figuring out, to avoid spoilers, I won't say what the experiment is because they haven't exactly figured it out in the show yet for the vault they were in, but they definitely know there's an experiment. They have speculation on it. So it was really fun I actually worked with one of the players has an idea of what the experiment was. I kind of kept it a little vague so that they still had some mystery to it, but they're kind of slowly unraveling what this is, and it's talked about in our show, is basically it's like when they send somebody out of the vault, they like reclamation day, they did at this vault they were doing like basically your names would get pulled and you'd get sent out, but it was essentially like taking the show Survivor and like sending people out and like essentially people in power like watching and betting on how long these people would survive out in the wastelands. So yeah, that's kind of like taking that as an inspiration, that TV show, and kind of blending it into that experiment. That's not the full gist of it, but that's a kind of a little snapshot of it. But then one of the vaults that the group encountered later on in the show, a lot of I think that's a thing too with Fallout, is a lot of like when you look at the vault experiments, they're kind of messed up. Some of them are really messed up. I mean, we can be real about that.
Yep.
And one of the vaults specifically that the group encounters, they essentially, it was like a levels of compatibility, and they would like manipulate people and tell them like they weren't compatible enough to be with this person, and they were like basically trying to like create the perfect couples, and just a lot of mental manipulation in this vault. And the group
Like The
uncovered.
Bachelor or something.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like a lot of, I mean, there's so much inspiration you can draw, but I mean, realistically, yeah, they're like creating these rifts and like making people, feel less than. But then, it was really messed up, that vault in particular. But yeah, I think, and of course, like there's more stuff that the group will discover. Like one of the main characters, her mother was from a vault originally, and the experiment with that, which the group did learn about, was they separated the children and the parents, and there were some kids that were like teenage years, and they had the kids go into their cryo tubes, and then the parents go in, but they purposely destroyed, like made sure that the cryo tubes were ineffective for the parents. So all the parents, the adults, died, and it was basically like teenagers and young kids like living in the vault and like having to survive.
Yeah.
So very like Lord of the Flies kind of style. Yeah.
So the other thing about the vaults is that they're designed to survive, but also to like live in essentially forever. I mean, eventually stuff breaks down and people are forced out, but
Right.
so people go in when all the bombs drop, and then
Correct.
they just stay there, like generationally, basically. I mean, the Fallout TV show has a lot of like, cryopreservation, and Fallout 4 had that as well, but that was not so much in the earlier games, and not in your show either. But it seems like a lot of people who went into the vaults might not have expected that from my reading of it, that it felt like this is a place to go to survive for a few years, and then they will come out, not like their children's children will come out. And I think part of that is that there wasn't really a plan. Like you go on, you survive the nuclear winter, where like crops are devastated and all of that, and then they come out, and the problem is there's still radiation everywhere. Like that doesn't get absorbed easily, so like everything is irradiated, and the result is that people stayed in the vaults for basically as long as possible to avoid that radiation. And the radiation also causes all the other problems that I wanted to talk about. We've got ghouls and all these mutated animals.
Yeah. I think that was another interesting thing, is how to weave those aspects into the world. And granted, for the most part, the interactions with the ghouls, they've run into some like feral ghouls and things like that, but they also met a ghoul that's like pretty well together. He's a bit crazy. His name's Vermin, and that was a really fun thing to bring into the story. Just kind of this reimagining of like the different levels of ghouls, and like whether they're feral or not, and like what pushes them to become feral. But then, yeah, also the kind of weird creatures. I mean, you obviously have like giant, like the giant moles, oh God, sorry, brain thinking of all the different types of creatures, like the bloat bugs, and things of that nature, super mutants. And how do you weave that into the world? And I think that's been something that has been dabbled in throughout. I think it's just another layer to the story. And even in like the Fallout show, they're like kind of slowly bringing in all of that Fallout lore. And I think that is kind of the intention to kind of within the story. But yeah, as far as like the setting goes, like thinking about all those mutated creatures, and they're even though it's death claws were created, one one of the creatures that kind of, with it being in Florida, we have gator claws, that kind of,
right.
but those I would say were more from like the radiation and things like that, and exposure to certain elements that
Isn't there
turn them.
something like that in Fallout 4 for the Nuka World expansion too?
I think there might be, yeah, because there's like actual photos. Yeah, so we have the gator claw in there, because I'm like, you got to have a gator claw in Florida, so yeah. But yeah, no, I think there's so much. I mean, as I've like sat down and looked at all of it, I'm like, what do I want to bring to this world? But again, it's such an expansive universe, especially with all the games and just, yeah, it's almost not overwhelming, but there's so much to pull from when it comes to Fallout. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to play around with the different aspects within the world, and kind of how do those mutated creatures, and which ones specifically do we pull into the location that the group is. That was something that I thought a lot about as well.
Mm-hmm.
What makes sense for that area, like big bugs, big big gators. Yeah, and then also just playing around with themes of like amusement park stuff too. That was another thing that we did a lot with. But yeah, so much to play with.
I feel like a lot of the mutations are also like, this is bigger and it has 2 heads or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
For the more stable ones.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing too. I think it just plays into like what if something was exposed to this much radiation, and I think certain things would get bigger. Some things would grow multiple pieces or more limbs, more heads, whatever it may be. And,
well, it's all sort of like comic book radiation. Like, I feel like usually the answer is just like radiation sickness, cancer, and death.
Yep.
A real answer.
Yeah, for a real answer for sure. But yeah, like this kind of fantasy. Oh, I think that's a great way to put it. Comic book radiation. It does some wonky stuff. So, yeah.
So for the other, like, there's also super mutants, which aren't mutated by the radiation and all of that. They're more of a manufactured thing, like the death claws. So those are people that turn into like ogres, basically.
Yeah.
Do those show up in the podcast show later on, or no?
They do, yeah. So they definitely show up. I believe around episode 10 is when we get our first encounter with super mutants. The group is moving through a city, and kind of a small rundown city, and there's a bunch of super mutant encampments. They have people, there's another someone else from a vault is in like one of the cages that super mutants have. It's very much inspired by like the stuff in Fallout 4. And they run into a super mutant encampment, and kind of the way they work and the territory, kind of being a little bit more territorial of their space. And I would say these super mutants that they encountered at that point were more of the aggressive types that kind of had lost that sense of humanity, if that makes sense. More kind of that primal animalistic super mutants.
Yeah.
And then, one of the characters, Ruthie, who was locked up in the shipping crate, her friend that like put her in there to try and protect her was a super mutant, and we do find him literally in the last episode of the season. Yeah.
The final type of characters I was thinking of were robots and synths, which are a little different, but they're both basically robots. And Hawke is a robot, but apparently doesn't think they're a robot.
Yep, they're a human. I mean, it's radiation affects everyone differently.
Yeah. So there's lots of robots left over that were kind of like servants for people before the war. Well, before the bombs dropped, I guess during the Great War. And these robots are everywhere. They're like servants and cleaners, security guards, all sorts of things, and they're quasi-human, but usually have, by the point of the games in the show, where like it's 100 or 200 years, there's something wrong with them at this point. Which Hawks is fairly obvious. Thinks they're a person.
Mhm.
From the choice, I'm assuming they think they're Ethan Hawke, the actor.
Well, they think no, they think they're the person in the vault that they were with. His name was Ethan Hawke, and they took on that person's persona after they died. Essentially, there's it gets more into it later on in the season, but yeah, they basically think they're I guess I wouldn't call them a caretaker, and not even their owner, but like the person they were affiliated with in the vault, Hawke. They
Right.
kind of take on that person's persona. Yeah.
Yeah, I did see it got more complicated with the episode because I listened to 3 episodes, but then I read the like short episode description for all the ones that are
Hmm.
out,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
yeah, there's some changes that are obvious there,
Hmm. Hmm.
which I don't want to spoil. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not supposed to be like Ethan Hawke, the actor that is living like currently. It's
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just
It was more of like a kind of a play on a joke on it, but yeah, because we were like, that's an actor, but no, it was a play on just a something they wanted to do. So we're like,
okay.
all right, we'll roll with it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, Synths are a bit different, and they're mostly in
Hmm.
Fallout 4. There's a few in the other games. They haven't shown up in the TV show yet, where they're robots that are trying to appear as if they are human copies, kind of,
Hmm. Hmm.
and are more like fully sentient in the way they act instead of having something wrong with them. Usually they're more like an actual person. Do you have
Hmm.
any of those in your show?
Oh yeah, for sure. Later on in the season, I think it's either episode 4 or 5. We meet our first sense.
Ew, I almost got there.
Yeah, I believe. Let me pull up. Yeah, I think it's episode 4 actually. Yeah, I think it's episode 4 that we meet our first synth, and and something that is transpiring down in an underground bunker, essentially. But yes, lots of synths are a pretty significant aspect to our story, I would say. For certain, with not to give no spoilers or anything, but it definitely is a big factor in kind of an experiment and the story. But yes, synths show up, very much like look like people. Definitely the later generations, I believe it's the third generation, is more kind of human like, and uh and kind of some of those earlier generations too that are still more robotic, and kind of have changed over time, but almost like I kind of imagine like the earlier since like iRobot. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but that's kind of
Yeah,
like
no,
what
very similar. Yeah, we can
very
even see
similar to
that
that.
in Fallout 4 for like the earlier generations that show up.
Yeah, so I think that yeah, we absolutely see synths in the story, and again, they play a pretty significant role in the overarching show. So
All
yeah,
right, cool.
definitely a big part of it.
All right. Next, I wanted to move on, kind of like describing the organizations that you mentioned earlier, like the
Yeah.
Enclave, the Institute, Brotherhood of Steel. And yeah, the NCR isn't relevant. I'm assuming the Caesar's Legion also isn't relevant.
Not in our setting, no.
Yeah, okay. Just because the NCR and Caesar's Legion are West Coast factions, so they just don't show up in Florida.
Hmm. Hmm.
So let's start with the big one, Enclave. That's the secret government organization that's still around.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so the Enclave, yes, they are a this that secretive faction that exists within the Fallout universe. It is very much tied into our story, and they are moving pieces and causing some trouble, you could say, here in in the wastelands for Ruthie, Hawke, Phil, and Reed. And I would say that they haven't had a ton of impact on the story like directly, but they're certainly in the background.
Hmm.
And I think that as we continue forward, more of that will come out and what they're doing specifically.
Yeah. I honestly, I feel like any Fallout story, like the Enclave, is going to be doing things in the background,
Oh
no
yeah.
matter what.
Yeah. So that's been one that we've really is on like the back burner simmering
Uh-huh.
right now. And then the Institute
Yeah, you
has
mentioned
been,
synths. Those are the Institute's the one that made synths, so they have to be there.
yeah, the Institute is a big player too in the story, and is tied to some of the kind of main NPCs that the group meets along the way. And there is, and I'll just say too, like I think as a storyteller, there are elements where there is some like creative liberty taken on some things, but kind of within this space, there's aspects of like the Institute working a bit with Vault Tech on, but solely through experimental purposes. So there was a little bit of a contract, you could say, that was implemented with the Institute in Vault Tech, or at least for a few of the vaults. So that was something that maybe not we would per se see in the universe yet, but the Institute is, regardless of its connection to Vault Tech within our story, it is very much present throughout. I would say that's probably the one faction that's the most dominant of all of them within the show.
So that's interesting to me because I don't remember the Institute existing before the bombs dropped within Fallout 4. Maybe it wasn't clarified, but to me it seemed like this was a post-apocalypse faction.
Yeah, I think that that came into being, it looks like about 33 years after the Great War. And I think what kind of, we haven't really got into like how the connection worked, but I think kind of the way I look at that and how to work that in from a narrative perspective is like the Institute was an idea prior to the Great War, and there was some of that kind of influenced a few experiments, and then it kind of came to be later on.
Okay.
And I would say that the Institute are more like perhaps the people that were more of the extremeness, and then kind of defected from the Institute, the main organization after it started, essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But no, the Institute is definitely probably one of my favorites, honestly. If I'm being completely honest, I really love the whole, I love the Institute. I think it's such a fun aspect to the lore with all the synths and things and what you can do with that. Yeah.
Yeah, little doppelganger stories.
Mm-hmm.
So for the Institute, I'm curious how you approach the ending of Fallout 4 and that's relation to your show, because Fallout 4 has multiple endings, but most of them that the players choose is the Institute is destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you after that, or have a atypical ending to that? What's the or before it?
Yeah, I think we haven't quite reached that point of like I as far as whether the Institute is going to exist or be destroyed. I think if I were to ask my players right now what they would want to inevitably do with the Institute, they probably want to destroy it, based on kind of where things are at story-wise. But I would say at this point, it's still active within the world. And ultimately, yeah, it'll be on the players to essentially, if that's something they want to go after, or if it's something that they want to work with. And I say they probably want to destroy, but there's a piece of the story, and I don't want to give spoilers away, that the Institute might be helpful for one of the characters. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. I'm curious to kind of see how they go with it. That's It's hard to tell at this
All right,
point. Yeah.
cool. So unknown yet.
Unknown. Yes.
The final organization I wanted to talk about was the Brotherhood of Steel, which is kind of a like foil to the Institute, where they're like the Brotherhood of Steel is an organization founded around trying to prevent a nuclear disaster happening again by controlling all technology and making it into like this is a thing that you need special permission to use, and we're going to possess all of it, and people will live as farmers on the land unless we give them permission to have a car or something like that. So the Brotherhood of Steel, in controlling technology, is also trying to control synths. And they view them as like this abomination robot that's trying to look human. So it should just be destroyed. We shouldn't try and control it and use it for something. It's just going to wreck society, and we need to eliminate this thing. Which is probably relevant if your story has a lot of synths in it.
Yeah. And so within our first season, we actually haven't even encountered the Brotherhood of Steel yet, but that's certainly something, and if my players are listening, we're going to be encountering the Brotherhood of Steel in the second season. So yeah, that's very much something that I have planned. It is going to be a pretty big plot point in the story in season 2, and it's an organization that I'm very excited about because I like that push and pull of like I really like the Institute and kind of the whole their kind of ethos, but then again the Brotherhood of Steel is such a juxtaposition to that, and how do those two organizations push and pull. And I think that it's going to be interesting because I feel like there's elements within the characters in the story that push and pull with how like they feel towards synths and things like that. So I'm excited to bring in that piece, and also just from the technological standpoint of like them controlling that, because again, we haven't run into a whole lot of like big technological things in the story. So that's something that I'm looking forward to exploring, because the Brotherhood of Steel is a very interesting faction, and there's a lot we can do with it, and I think it would weave well into the overall story. It's just figuring out the best time to bring it into the mix. I mean, that's the thing with all stories, you know.
And I think another relevant part for your story is that the Brotherhood of Steel, because they control technology, are very powerful compared to the other factions, because they all have like power armor and big guns and helicopters and all this stuff. So introducing them, it becomes something that a lot of the other encounters that people have, they can like a hero party within a RPG can like overcome with force. And the Brotherhood of Steel is not an organization you can do that with. Right.
Yeah, it's not just walk in and, you know, guns blazing. It's like, no, you're going to get your butt whooped. So, and that's just like one, if there's two people in power armor, like it's going to be a little difficult for a group of just, you know, 4 everyday people, because, and I'm not saying that they're everyday, but you know, they're not in power armor. Granted, they do have a set of power armor now, but they just had found it somewhere. Someone else had stored it away.
Yep.
But yeah, they know of the Brotherhood of Steel. It's just they haven't encountered them yet, which I look forward to that moment, because I think it might be one of those situations where, as you had just said, you know, they maybe they think they can take them, but then they're like, oh, these guys mean business. This is not just something you can just walk in and expect to win the fight. Like these people are trained to survive, and yeah.
So before we get into like the campaign and like the story you're telling and all the different stories you can tell, I feel like we've done a good job of describing the Fallout universe. Well,
of
setting.
course.
It's not actually a full universe. It's just Fallout is just
setting,
the United States. It doesn't even go beyond that for the setting, really. I wanted to talk about the Fallout system. So you're using the official Modiphius 2d20 system.
Yeah, yeah. So how it works is just a quick little brief overview. Yeah, so you have 2d20s. You want to roll low on your dice. You have target numbers you need to hit, but rolling low on your dice is good. Like a natural 20 is a complication, and that the GM can basically throw a wrench in your plans or something. Sometimes like it won't happen immediately. Like they'll roll and they'll get a natural 20. And then there's a complication that finds them later. Maybe they're like sneaking into a place and they roll a natural 20 on that sneak check, and it ends up someone catches them and then they follow them and there's repercussions. So it's the opposite of like D&D, roll low is good in Fallout. It's pretty expansive as far as like character creation goes. There's a bunch of expansions out. So you can play a synth, you can play a Mr. Handy, a Miss Nanny, you can play survivors, you can play ghouls, you can play people from the vault, super mutants. They have all kinds of different characters you can play. But the system itself, honestly, is really easy to pick up if you've played really any other TTRPG. It's pretty simple.
From what I remember from other Modiphius games, I'm not sure Fallout works this way, but you're kind of adding two things together. So like sneaking would be agility for your main stat, and then like your skill in sneaking. You add those together.
And that's your target number.
Yeah, you're rolling 2d20, and one of your dice needs to be under that number to succeed.
Correct. Yeah, and then if you have tagged skills, so like say you have a tagged in sneak, and you have like a 3 that you have there. If you roll a 3 or under, that's a critical success in that case. So that would be 2 successes, because the GM will be like, all right, in order to pull this off, you need to get 3. You need to get 3 successes. So you're like, well, that's going to be hard to do, but I got between my agility and my sneak skill, I need to get a 7 or lower or whatever, or we'll say a 10 or lower. And your tag skill is in sneak, so you roll a 9 on one dice and you roll a 2 on the other, so you get your 3 successes. So that's kind of how that works. But yeah, you're right. You add those two together, and then you just need to roll below that target number, essentially. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that the main stats are the special stats from the games.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Strength, perception. Oh my gosh. Endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck.
Good job. I had it pulled up on my screen.
Oh, okay. I'm like, oh man, I got to get this right. I can't screw this up. Somebody's going to at me. No. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I like the system a lot. I was a little hesitant going into it. But it's pretty smooth. I think that they've done a pretty good job with it, and the expansions are really cool. And I don't even feel like I've scratched the surface with possibilities, but I feel like that's the case with most TTRPGs. It's like you go in and you're like, oh man, there's a lot more I can do with this, but will I ever get to? That's the thing. So.
Did you consider any other like sort of nuclear apocalypse systems for this?
Not for Fallout, because they had the system, and I was like, I just was like, no, I want to try this. I want to give it a go. I didn't try any other nuclear apocalypse, any kind of systems like that. Didn't even think about it, honestly. I was just like, the Fallout system's here, let's go for it. And yeah.
It is the system you have to do the least to make work, because it already has like all of the sort of side characters, like super mutants, ghouls, all that stuff is already there to work with. Compared to another system where there'd be something that's like kind of equivalent, but you'd have to like smush it a little to have it fit into the box that you want it to fit in. Yeah.
Well, like I've run post-apocalyptic like D&D campaigns, and I don't know, I just there's like that can be a little wonky because, you know, how powerful is magic in the world? Like, is it a low magic world, high magic? And but with Fallout, it's so just like they give you the tools to make it feel, I mean, it's still cartoony or comic-y or in some aspects, but it's still grounded in realism, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, like I think it's called verisimilitude, where like it has these rules for how things work that are not reality, but are fairly consistent within their application of like, you know, you get exposed to too much radiation, you'll turn into a ghoul instead of getting radiation sickness and dying.
Right.
And maybe a bad example because like ghouls for how they turn feral is not very well explained, but
No.
the TV show is trying to say it's this drug thing that keeps them from becoming feral, which was never established anywhere in any other lore as far as I know. Seemed to be just random for who became feral and who wasn't.
Yeah.
But there's many other things that are fairly consistent. Like you need a fusion core for power armor, and you need fusion cores for a lot of the different technology that people are using. So there's like sort of theft of fusion cores to get power armor to work, and I don't know. I'm struggling to think of examples, but it does feel like a very consistent setting.
Yeah, it does. I mean, yeah, the power cores. I think like even, you know, like even getting down to how like the resting, like how rest works in this game. Like if you don't, there's just certain aspects to like the way healing, like it's not just like, oh, you know, I fall asleep and I'm, you know, 100% healed up. There's more realism in that too, and I think that just adds to the stakes and just make it feel more realistic, even though it still has those goofy Fallout elements to it. It does, again, kind of ground it a little bit in that realism, just kind of speaking to what I had mentioned earlier. I think, yeah, those little pieces, and I don't, it's a lot of fun. I like the way that they pulled it off in the core rulebook. So
yeah. Well, yeah, let's talk about the campaign.
Yeah.
So you start off in a vault with, we talked about like earlier about there's this reclamation day, happens once a year, and someone's sent to the surface on some sort of like pointless quest to resettle, which obviously one person cannot do by themselves. So presumably everyone that's gone up before has failed. So that's Reed and Phil are the ones that go up.
Correct.
I like in my notes I wrote down like Phil is like the squarest man that has ever existed.
Yep.
He's like a over exaggerated like 50s house husband or something. It's just like
Yep. And I would say too, yeah, Phil is such a goofy guy. He's such a goofy guy.
Yeah, and the voice that Richard does for him too is just
wild. We call it the Southern Kermit. That's we love Phil though. But yeah, no, I definitely agree. His arc is really cool in this first season. There's some stuff that happens that yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, it feels like inevitably this has to be a loss of innocence arc for where
for sure. I mean, it's kind of like you know, when he came to it, he's like, you know, I want to have that where I want him to be kind of just this very optimistic, and then the world just crushes him. And Reed is very much the opposite of that. Like Reed is more distrustful and is kind of has more of that, like is more grounded, I would say, than Phil. There's less of that innocence to him.
Right.
Which is a fun thing for the two of them to play off of each other. So
yeah. And for our other human member, we have Ruthie, who's a wasteland survivor. This is something that I feel like is never very well explained within the Fallout universe of like, so people went into the vaults and they survived. And then there's tons of radiation up on the surface. how are there humans on the surface who didn't turn into ghouls?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not asking you for an answer there, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think, well, if you look at like what happened at Shady Sands, like that's very much kind of, I think that's a great example of like civilization still existing outside of that. Like I think there was people that were preppers and found a way to survive, and which kind of sounds a little crazy, but like they had their own maybe small vaults, and these settlements developed from it, and people trying to survive. And Ruthie comes from like a few generations of people that have survived out in the wastelands. And I think, yeah, they've left that kind of vague. It's like, was every spot just absolutely decimated? I mean, I think for the most part, yes, but I do think there's still some gray area, and that's kind of what we played around with Ruthie and her settlement and kind of where she came from, and just from the perspective of survivors out in the wastelands. So, yeah.
Yeah, she also seems very baseball obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
She's got a baseball bat. She talks a lot about baseball, which is a big focus in Fallout 4 because the main city is within the
Fenway. Yeah.
Yeah, the Boston baseball park.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not in the Fallout 4 setting. We're down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Not that baseball can't also exist in Florida, obviously.
Right.
But my assumption was that Dakota, the player for Ruthie, had really liked that part of the Fallout 4 game and had wanted to bring that into the campaign.
Yeah, and I think too with that is, well, it hasn't been something that's been established, but I imagine the people that kind of settled down in that area were maybe, because there's a lot of people, because I'm from New England, so there's a lot of people like snowbirds that go down to Florida during. Yep. So I kind of saw it as like, these are people from New England. They, were in the area where the baseball was a big thing, and they happened to be down there when bombs started dropping, and they kind of brought that cultural element with them to that area, and that's kind of been passed on through generations as a way to like pass time. And it's very, American baseball. So I think that was something that kind of got weaved into that story. And I think that would be, if I had to justify it, that would be kind of how I see that coming into that player, into that character being down in Florida, at least. Yeah.
Well, I think baseball is also a very easy sport to play because you don't even need a ball. Like other sports, you need a ball to play, but baseball, you can play with rocks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
You just need a rock and a stick and you can play it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's literally it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can definitely see that surviving when other sports have this issue with equipment, and baseball just doesn't. Like you'll always have rocks and sticks as long as there's, I guess, plants around.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. So that's Ruthie, and she's kind of, she's a survivor. She's kind of cantankerous and doesn't like the Phil and Reed at first because they're. I mean, we see this in the TV show, and it's all over the games, that like the Vault people are sort of privileged because they've survived without having to, struggle and kill people and be worried about like being murdered by others for their stuff. And that they're sort of babies in the world, and Ruthie treats them that way at the start. Yeah.
And again, I think that was something, that I think, I mean, when we see like, for example, in the TV show, and I think too, it happens within the Fallout games, is like, when people meet Vaulties, they have a certain stigma attached to them, and I think that was something that when Ruthie was being created to have that and kind of bring in that element of Fallout into the story that we were telling. And then, of course, that sets up how does Ruthie change and feel towards these people as she spends more time with them and kind of sees that like, hey, they're kind of just like me, were just surviving, and that change in character for her too, and having to like rely on these people to help her out when she finds herself in difficult situations, and how that changes her perception of, yeah, they're from a vault, but they still are capable, they still care. Maybe they're not as bad as what I was told.
Yeah, yeah. And then our final character is the robot we were talking about before, Hawke.
Yeah, Hawke. What a fun character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this whole how that came to be. So yeah, the basically, and it's not a ton of spoilers. Well, it is a little bit of a spoiler, but yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier that Hawke took on the persona of the person that they were with, and it was due to a traumatic event that transpired, and there was a glitch that happened with Hawke and why they took on that persona, and those kind of memories that they had that were stored in their data banks of who they were before dissipated, or they're there, they just need to be fixed. And yeah, it's created this kind of bounty hunter, essentially the machine, and that's been searching the wastelands trying to find their daughter, the little girl that the Miss Nanny who Hawke was before was taken care of, and was captured during a raid on the vault they were in. So yeah.
Ominous.
Yeah.
Who captures children?
It was, it has to do with a specific it's revealed later on in the show why, but yeah, it's revealed later on in the show why it happened. So it all comes together. It makes sense later on in the season. So
well, yeah, I feel like we've got all the characters. We've got the basic idea is that Phil is the one selected to leave the vault. He picks Reed to come with him, and he's trying to find his dad or something.
Yeah, his dad was the first, and Zane were the first two to leave the vault. So Reed's determined to find his dad, and Phil has been given this object by the overseer to deliver to Orlando, a location in Orlando, which is just part of the experiment, part of the game that they're playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good Fallout story of, vault dwellers come out, vault dwellers have to have some mission, and they meet people on the way there, and the story evolves from there in the way that, stories do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious how much of that is something that you designed or your players designed or something like collaborative with them. Because looking at the face of it, it's like, this is all player motivation. I don't know what you've done.
Yeah, no. As far as well, I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, as a GM, you, at least how I run my games, is we sit down at the table. I talk with my players about what kind of story do you want to tell? And then I have individual meetings with each of my players and find out what their motivations are, what's going to drive them. And once I have that, and knowing like what those things are, I set up the catalyst to the story, and have, tidbits that will be important as we go that I can plug in where need be. But I'm very much a build the scaffolding, or build the scaffolding and let the players build the house. Like, I build the foundation and the scaffolding, and then I let the players build the house, and then I just put like the furniture in certain points to really bring it all together. That's kind of how I go about storytelling, because I think it's just makes for a better story when you have that collaboration, and allow like let the players tell you what they want to do, and then from there you can adapt, and just long as you have your foundation, like know where you kind of want to drive the story. It's just like putting down the gutter, putting down the pieces to help lead to those places they want to go, and then just throwing, complications and wrenches in the way to add stakes and make it interesting. That's how I think, you can take those motivations from the characters as the GM and tell a good story.
Yeah, yeah. And it's definitely harder to design a story that way than just sort of dungeon that the players have to explore or something, because you have to really keep in mind more prominently what the characters and their motivations are, because it needs to be something that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But you're less designing a story and you're more designing a situation, and then the story evolves organically from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just improv. It's just like, you throw those wrenches out there, and you build off of it. And I also, like, I may not have like the story completely, but like I went to school for like screenwriting and like telling stories. So for me, it's like long as I have that foundation there, I don't need to have everything built out, because like I know what my character's motivations are. Like I'm very well aware of that. So then I just build the story around that. And yeah, I mean, I run a lot of games. I ran over 300 last year, so I have a pretty good beat on how to navigate stories. So I've run over, between this year, 2025 and 2024 in total, I ran 600 and I think 53 games over those 2 years. So I feel pretty good about about kind of how I navigate telling stories at this point in my life, just from having all of that experience and all those hours poured into it. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not quite 10,000 hours, but getting closer. So
there are some villains that show up in the show that are obviously more designed by you.
mm-hmm.
The Faceless Raiders show up right away, and King Cola later on seems like a antagonistic figure from what I was reading.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's more you bringing in something that you've designed. What were you looking to do with those?
Yeah, I think for the Faceless, they're kind of just like this, not quite obviously the Caesar's Legion, but some type of faction that was quite dominant on the East Coast, and just bringing that into the story, just to have, again, I brought it in because I wanted to attach it to one of the players' backstories, based on some things that they had told me. So I was like, all right, how can I bring this antagonist into the story and have it make sense and impactful for the character, and also just the general world itself. So yeah, the Faceless was something that I wanted to bring in, and kind of just their general vibe. And then the King Cola was very much someone that kind of gained a lot of power over time in the wastelands. King Cola essentially was hoarding all of these supplies and leaving the people of this place without anything to live off of. And just very much an antagonist of like, this guy just kind of sucks. And he also was affiliated to one of the NPCs the group had met along the way and had treated them really poorly. So they wanted to go in and have some words with King Cola and his group of people. Yeah, it was tied to an NPC and the group wanting to help them out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we've reached the end of what we can easily discuss without getting into spoilers.
Yeah, of course.
Is there anything else you want to talk about for the setting, the campaign, the system?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered quite a bit of it. And yeah, if I would just say if anybody's interested in trying out the Fallout system, it's a lot of fun. We also, like, on our show, we try to put little pop-ups just to show, like, when rulings are happening, like the items groups are using, just to, like, kind of almost learn to play while you watch. So, it's a really, honestly, a pretty easy system to pick up if you played D&D or Pathfinder or really any games like that. Fallout's pretty simple to pick up. So definitely check it out. It's a fun system and just a fun place, sandbox to play in.
Yeah, I think Modiphius makes really good systems with what they pick for, like, what's added for that target number. And yeah, they do a good job.
Yeah, I play the Dishonored game by Modiphius and it's awesome. It's really, really good. It's really good. So yeah. But no, I think that's it. I don't have anything else to add. I appreciate you having me on to chat a little bit about this. So yeah.
I'm going to sign off by asking for some DMing advice that you want to give people. I feel like you kind of already did, but if you want to put it in a neater package.
Yeah, of course. DMing advice. I would say something that I've learned over the past couple years is embrace the chaos. It's going to happen sometimes. You can try and plan for everything, but sometimes it's better just to have a little outline, know what your main story beats are, and just create that scaffolding and let your players build on it. And I would also say too, it's when you're building out, at least what I've learned is when you're building out your worlds, it's easy to want to plan for everything. But I think when you go into session prep, if you know the lore of your world, if you know the general direction you're going, don't overplan, because oftentimes things won't go exactly the way you want, and it's better just to have that kind of foundation. And if you know your lore of your world, you're going to be just fine. So don't over prep. I think that's my best advice.
Yeah. No.
Because it's easy to.
Well, I mean, it's true for many things. If you're well informed about what you're doing, it's much easier to kind of go with the flow and adapt as needed. So yeah, that's good advice.
It's always good to do that. So, but yeah, I think that's what I've learned. Definitely a big learning point. So yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks, Kylie. Why don't you tell us where we can find what you're doing now and what's happening in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me everywhere online at Critical Rose. That's critical with a K. And then my actual play production company is at the Dicescape, all everywhere online. We have, obviously, the Fallout first season is completely out on YouTube. It was a crit nominated for Best Series last year. And we also have a new Daggerheart actual play series. It's kind of a grim, dark setting. It's a long form AP that's going to be, I don't know when this will come out, but that show's going on currently. It's going to be going on for a bit. And we have a bunch of other shows in the works that I can't really talk about right now because of potential NDA stuff. So, I'm just going to leave it there. But we have lots of things in the queue. And yeah, we're making some cool stuff, working on a book as well right now. So we'll kind of see what that looks like. But yeah, that's really it. Check us out. We got some great stories and we have a lot of fun at the table. So yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Kylie.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
That was Kylie telling us about Fallout Garden of Adam. If you'd like to listen to that show, it's available on YouTube. There's a link in the episode description to the playlist where all the episodes are. There's 20 episodes with some sort of breakdown episodes in between. If you're looking for other projects that Kylie's working on, there's also a link to dicescape.com That's DICESCAPE.com, and a link tree for everything else that Kylie's doing. And if you like the Fallout RPG, there's also a link for that in the episode description. Well, thank you for listening to this episode. As always, our episode is sponsored by our Patreons, Darren at the moment. And if you'd like to be a Patreon or support the show, you can leave reviews or join our Discord. And we're always also looking for more guests. So if you'd like to be on the show, there's a form to fill out in the episode description as well. Thank you for listening.